This is on Iraq, Iran, and Afghanistan. We preemptively went into Iraq, and not one terrorist came from Iraq. And now there's Iran, and you made sort of the joke of bomb, bomb, bomb Iran. I hope that was a joke. And Osama's still running around somewhere. So I wonder what your feelings are on preemptively going into countries where we don't really like the leader, if they have oil or if they don't have oil, and what you plan to do if you're president on going into Iran, not going into Iran, pulling out of Iraq, not pulling out of Iraq, going into Afghanistan, or any other countries that you think you want to win wars with. And we lost Vietnam. You said you knew how to win wars. We didn't win there. And I don't know if winning wars is necessarily something that a president wants to do or should do.
Well, thank you. You ask a very profound question, and I appreciate it. And I will, again, not try to give a long response because we have other questions and comments. But since Americans are in harm's way, and Americans have made enormous sacrifice, I think it's worthy. And the Iranian threat and the situation in Afghanistan could lead to further greater sacrifices. I'd like to just say to you, we are in a dangerous world. There's the threat of radical Islamic extremism, which threatens everything we stand for and believe in. This is an evil that sometimes it's hard for us to comprehend. And they are active in a lot of places in the world. There is some information that they try to reestablish cells in the United States of America. Obviously, they've had some small success in Europe. It's an evil that's hard to encompass. Not long ago, Al-Qaeda took two mentally disabled young women, put suicide vests on them, and sent them into a marketplace in Baghdad, and by remote control detonated those suicide vests. It's hard for us to encompass how evil these people are. They like to cut off people's heads and put it out on the internet. And they're dedicated to the extinction of everything we stand for and believe in. Now, I believe we were justified in going into Iraq based on the fact that every intelligence agency in the world, including the United States of America, believed that Saddam Hussein had nuclear weapons. He'd used them, weapons of mass destruction, and he had used them twice before. And there's no doubt about his willingness and desire to develop them and use them again. The sanctions were breaking down. American planes were being shot at. There was a multi-billion-dollar oil for food scandal in the UN, et cetera, et cetera. But that's a history, and that is for historians to argue about, and I'll be glad to have that discussion at some academic forum. But we are there. And we went there, and we were losing. And we were losing badly. And I went over there early on and saw the strategy, and I said, this can't succeed. It's going to fail. We've got to change it. I was criticized by Republicans for being disloyal. I said at the darkest time in my political aspirations for president, I said, we've got to send 30,000 more troops over there. Everybody, the political pundits and others said, McCain's campaign is dead. And my friends, I said I would rather lose a political campaign than lose a war. And I said we had to do this new strategy, and that is a strategy. It isn't just an injection of troops. And they have succeeded. They have succeeded, my friends. They have succeeded. And I'll be glad to give you all the data to back that up. Now, have we had victory and final victory? No. The Al-Qaeda and others are back on their heels, but they still are intent on doing bad things. And they'd love to try to resurrect their efforts. And they've still got the Iranians who are exporting the most lethal explosive devices into Iraq that is killing young Americans. And we've still got the Iranians trying to moving forward with developing nuclear weapons. But in Iraq, we have a government that is pretty effective. We have a justice system that is stumbling and haltingly moving forward. And we have succeeded. I'm not saying we are succeeding. We have succeeded. And we will win this war. We will win this war if we don't do what Senator Obama wanted to do. And that's set a date for withdrawal and predicated on a date and not conditions on the ground. I'm glad today that Senator Obama apparently is going to sit down for the first time ever, with General Petraeus, our general over there, one of the great generals in history. He's never asked for a briefing to sit down and get a briefing from him. I'm glad he's going to Afghanistan for the first time. He's never been to Afghanistan, and I'm astonished, and I'm really astonished, that he should give a policy speech on Iraq and Afghanistan before he goes to find out the facts. Remarkable. I've never seen that before. I usually go to the place and find out the facts and then develop a policy. So Senator Obama has said that the surge would fail, that it couldn't succeed, that we'd see greater civil war, and he still fails to admit that it has succeeded. So the Americans really have a choice, because I know how to win wars. And if we'd have done what Senator Obama has said, we would have a wider war, we would have Iranian increase in influence, you would see greater sectarian violence, and every possibility that the United States of America would have to come back. He categorically stated time after time that the surge couldn't work and wouldn't work. Now he says that maybe he'll assess the situation. There would be no situation to assess if we had the dates for withdrawal which he advocated. So there wouldn't be any discussion, because we would have lost in Iraq. And we have succeeded. Now, as far as Iran is concerned, they continue to try to develop nuclear weapons. Their president goes to the United Nations in New York City and says that his country is going to wipe Israel off the map. He calls them a, quote, stinking corpse. And we need to have the most stringent possible sanctions that we can impose on them. And that means trade, financial, diplomatic. It means a whole lot of things. Unfortunately, in the United Nations Security Council, the Russians are blocking any real meaningful tough action for us to take against the Iranians. So we have to get together with our European allies, including President Sarkozy of France, who has been very outspoken and active on this, and impose sanctions on them that could modify their behavior. Their economy isn't good, my friends, despite all of the oil revenues that they have. But I also have to look you in the eye and tell you that the United States of America can never, ever allow a second Holocaust. We cannot allow that to happen. That's what the United States of America is all about. But I believe that we can modify Iranian behavior, that we can persuade them to give up this acquisition of nuclear weapons, and we need to exhaust every possible option before we ever consider a military option. So let me just say again to you that Americans have made great sacrifice, and it has grieved us all. It has grieved every one of us. And the one thing that I think is important is to remember that the United States, if we failed and if we were defeated, would face, in my view, much greater sacrifice of American blood and treasure. And let me just end up with a very brief story. At a town hall meeting last August in Wolfboro, New Hampshire, a woman stood up and said, "Senator McCain, would you do me the honor of wearing a bracelet with my son's name on it, Matthew Stanley?" Matthew was 22 years old. He was killed in combat outside of Baghdad just before Christmas last year. I said, "I'd be honored to wear this bracelet." And then she said, "But I want you to promise me one thing. I want you to promise me that you'll do everything in your power to make sure that my son's death was not in vain." I make that same commitment to the over 4,000 families of those who have already sacrificed. And I have always, and in that case and other cases in my life, put my country first. I knew it was unpopular to say we had to send 30,000 more troops over there. I knew it was unpopular to say that we had to stay and change the strategy. I knew it wouldn't help me any at that time, but I knew what was right. I knew what was right, and I have the experience and knowledge and background to make the right judgments to keep this nation safe. And I hope that at least partially answers your question. Thank you very much.